Sirius Black and James Potter were not deeply explored in the movies. Fortunately, in this video, I will tell you the whole story of the group. So let's start with Remus Lupin. When he was a young boy, Remus was bitten by Fenrir Greyback, one of Voldemort's Death Eaters, which worried him because he was not allowed to go to Hogwarts. However, with Dumbledore becoming the headmaster and taking certain precautions, he assured there was no reason for him not to come to school. Remus began attending Hogwarts at the age of 11. That same year, James and Black met on the train. They found themselves in the same compartment with a girl named Lily Evans and a boy named Severus. James overheard who he was and asked, "Whose side are you on?" "I'd be with the Slytherins, wouldn't you?" looking at Sirius. Sirius replied, "My whole family was in Slytherin. Maybe I'll break that tradition." "Where would you go if you had the choice?" James answered, "Gryffindor. The place where courage dwells in hearts. Just like my father." Snape made a disdainful sound about the girl. James turned to him and asked, "Got a problem with that?" Even though Snape said, no, his body language suggested otherwise. Sirius said something taunting to Snape and James, and he burst into laughter together. Lily got angry with this situation and left the compartment with Severus. Sirius later broke his family's pureblood tradition and joined Gryffindor with James. The two became close to Lupin and Pettigrew in the same house and formed an inseparable quartet. Dumbledore used the Shrieking Shack just outside the Hogwarts grounds to ensure Lupin's and other students' safety. He planted a tree there that would repel anyone approaching. So, there was a pine tree, a willow, and a beech. A path was cleared from under the willow to the shack. When the full moon arrived, every month Lupin would pass through the tunnel under the beech and complete his werewolf transformation in the shack. The shack later gained its name and started being referred to by people as the Shrieking Shack because villagers would hear screams and howls from there. In reality, those screams and howls came from Lupin undergoing transformation. Dumbledore spread the idea that the shack was haunted. So, people wouldn't suspect, and it was a good way to keep people away from the shack. Villagers were too afraid to approach the place, fearing violent spirits. As I said, the quartet had become inseparable. Sirius was a very handsome boy, and girls often looked at him dreamily. James was confident, a bit cocky and arrogant, with the demeanor of a Quidditch star. He had a habit of fixing his hair and would tousle it to match his broom. He often carried around a golden snitch and played with it. Peter, on the other hand, was a quieter child who followed the other three. Professor McGonagall had remarked that he was a foolish child. Peter idolized the others heroically, but in reality, he wasn't really good at anything and often sought out stronger people to protect him. Lupin was disappearing every month, and James and Sirius, being his best friends, noticed that one of their closest friends was frequently missing. Lupin made up many stories, like his mother being ill and needing to go home to see her. Because he was afraid, Lupin was happier than ever, as he finally had friends for the first time. He thought they would abandon him if they found out what he really was. In their second year, Sirius, James, and Peter finally understood why Lupin was leaving every month. According to Lupin, surprisingly, none of them abandoned him. Instead, they worked on something to ensure Lupin could safely undergo his transformations. The three of them attempted to become Animagi, which took them 3 years to figure out, and they succeeded in their 4th year. Each could transform into an animal at will. They couldn't control Lupin's actions when he was in his human form. Lupin had said that werewolves were only a danger to humans. James turned into a stag, Sirius into a black dog, and Peter managed to transform into a rat. The three of them would use James's invisibility cloak to go outside and transform when night fell. The group members gave each other nicknames. Sirius was called Padfoot, Peter was known as Wormtail, James was nicknamed Prongs, and Lupin was dubbed Moony, giving the group the moniker, the Marauders. Lupin became less dangerous when his friends were around. James and Sirius spent their time, Lupin said, making sure no student enters the Hogwarts grounds and finds out more about us. With this knowledge, they were able to create the Marauders map, Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. The Marauders map showed all areas of the school and the whereabouts of every individual within the castle at any given time, along with all the secret passages. The clashes between the Marauders and Snape were quite frequent during their years at Hogwarts. Snape had a grudge against them. Hence, they had a natural enmity stemming from their houses. Of course, there were quite a few exceptions. The Marauders took these clashes to another level. Sirius explained to Snape how to pass through the Whomping Willow to satisfy his curiosity about where Lupin went every month. But when James found out what Sirius was doing, he went after Snape and, at great personal risk, saved Snape from being killed by Lupin. He had seen what Lupin was. Dumbledore said it was forbidden to mention Lupin to anyone. James started to develop an interest in Evans, a Muggle-born student with red hair. He would tousle his hair whenever he saw her, play with a snitch to catch her attention, and try to appear cool, but none of it worked. In their 5th year, Lupin became the prefect of their house and often let his friends get away with more than they should have. Lupin wouldn't regret not intervening when Sirius and James bullied Snape, even though he didn't participate. One day, they came out of the ordinary wizarding levels exam. They teased Peter because he couldn't answer a question on the test, which was about identifying 5 signs of a werewolf. Peter couldn't do it. They had said, "How thick can you get, Wormtail? Running around with a werewolf once a month." The 4 of them were sitting by the lake, and James immediately started tossing his hair when he saw Evans. He started putting on a show of speed. Sirius said he was bored and wished it was full moon. Later, James gave a signal, indicating Sirius. While Lupin and Peter sat, James stood up. James and Sirius disarmed Snape and knocked him to the ground. I watched quietly how the exam went. His nose was touching parchment, they wouldn't be able to read any of the words with marks all over. When Snape cursed at them, the duo waved their wands and told Snape to wash his mouth out. They made pink bubbles come out of Snape's mouth. Snape was furious at this. Lily came and told them to stop. She said to James, "If you go out with me, I'll do whatever you say and leave Snape alone." Snape, however, rejected Lily, saying he'd prefer to go out with the giant squid in the lake. He said he didn't need the help of a little mudblood like her. He told James to apologize immediately, but Lily told him he was just as bad as Snape, making people sick, and walked away. Sirius said, "If we read between the lines, I can tell you think you're a bit arrogant." James even now turned back to Snape and continued to bully him. In the following year, Sirius ran away from home because he hated his family and pureblood traditions. Sirius fled to James's house and went there during school holidays. This brought them even closer, and now they were like true brothers. In their 7th year at Hogwarts, they matured quite a bit and lost some of their recklessness. However, Sirius began to fancy James, and they started dating in their 7th year. Although they occasionally clashed, things didn't escalate too much. James was the one who matured the most. Despite never being a prefect, he became the Gryffindor student president. The foursome finished their 7 years as Hogwarts students. While James excelled academically, Peter barely passed. They, along with Lily, joined Dumbledore's Order of the Phoenix, which was formed against the Dark Forces. Eventually, they had a child named Harry Potter, and Sirius became his godfather. After a story was made about Harry Potter and the Dark Wizard, James took their son into hiding, thinking no one would think of them. Peter was chosen, but trust was misplaced. On Halloween night in 1981, Lily and James were killed by Peter's betrayal. That night, Voldemort failed to kill the Potters and disappeared due to the physical damage he suffered. After Skybrist, he truly began to fall ill and lose a lot of weight. This was because he feared Peter following him. Due to Sirius's escape, everyone feared for Helen's safety. Everyone thought he was the Dark Wizard eliminated by Voldemort. Peter, once again, staged his own death by biting himself and leaving a blood trail to make Ron believe he had eaten the rat. He then appeared in a milk jug in Hagrid's hut. Eventually, Sirius was gone. Hermione's cat, Crookshanks, helped him, providing the password to the Gryffindor Tower and aiding Sirius in reaching his pet. Unfortunately, his attempts failed. Remus noticed Filch's name on the Marauders map and suspected that Peter was still alive. When Skybrist was found in Hagrid's hut, he attempted to flee on the way back, but he was caught by Ron in front of the Whomping Willow. dragged to the shack by Sirius in his dog form. Skybers, in his dog form, was pulled into the shouting shack, and then Harry and Hermione called for mercy for those in the room. As Remus and Sirius prepared to kill their former friend, Peter claimed he wouldn't kill. Harry, not wanting his father's closest friends to be murderers, prevented Peter's death. Although Harry aimed to hand Peter over to the authorities and clear his name, things didn't go as planned. When the full moon came, Remus forgot to take his wolfsbane potion and transformed into a werewolf. Sirius, in his dog form, intervened to protect Harry, Ron, and Hermione from Remus. Taking advantage of the chaos, Peter disarmed Ron with Remus's wand and escaped in his rat form. Peter later went to find Voldemort and eventually found him, helping him regain a full body. He sacrificed his hand to bring him back and was rewarded with a stronger silver hand than his original one. During the Second Wizarding War, when Sirius and Lupin went to the Department of Mysteries to rescue Harry and his friends, Sirius Black was killed by his cousin Bellatrix. As the Second Wizarding War continued, Peter continued to serve Voldemort, with only the Marauders left. He falls in love with a member and eventually marries her. Tungus becomes pregnant with their son, whom they name Teddy. One night, Harry, Ron, and Hermione are captured and brought to Malfoy Manor, where Peter is present. Amid the events there, he is sent downstairs due to a noise from the basement of Petricro, where the house elves are emerging. To escape, Ron and Harry fight with Rudd. Ron manages to take Peter's wand. Petrog starts choking Harry. At that moment, Harry reminds him that he spared his life and owes him a debt. Peter hesitates to choke Harry due to a fleeting sense of mercy, but this hesitation leads to his downfall. Starting to choke himself due to the mercy shown to Harry, he dies by his own hand, choking himself in the struggle. Lupin continued to fight alongside his comrades until the final moments of the Second Wizarding War. He was killed while fighting alongside his nephew, Dolu, and thus the last member of the Marauders lost his life.